Which NFL teams have the best defensive lines? Welcome, football fans, to another BLV NFL Rankings video. In this video, I rank every defensive line entering 2025. From the worst to the best, number 32, through to number 1. Which team has the best defensive line? Which team has the worst defensive line? If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button. It's the only way I know you like these rankings. So if you want more player rankings, unit rankings entering 2025, then like the video and I'll make more. It's that simple. Also, let me know in the comments your opinion. I put a lot of effort and time into ranking these units and these teams and these players. So let me know in the comments who's too high, which team is too low. Where does your favorite team belong on the list? Let me know in the comment section below. Let's begin with the worst defensive line in the NFL. And I have to point out, guys, this isn't strictly pass rush. This is defensive line. So run defense, depth, superstar talent, all of that collectively comes together to create the best defensive lines in the NFL. We ranked interior linemen. We ranked the top edge rushers, top 32 at each spot. If you haven't seen those videos, go check it out. Now it's time to rank them as a unit. At number 32, the reigning, defending, worst defensive line in football, it is the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers were historically bad in 2024. They could not stop the run to save their lives. In fact, they were the worst run defense I've maybe ever seen. They would allow a 3rd and 4 like their life depended on it. I mean, it was unbelievable how many times a team would just run straight up the middle and get a first down. If a team just committed to running the ball on all 3 downs, I think they would have got a first down more often than not. They were that bad. And obviously, they removed Derek Brown. He got injured extremely early in the season, and they never really had a counterpunch. Without him, they were desperate to stop the run. They had no personnel, no size, no beef, no ability to stop the run. And on top of that, they were bad rushing the quarterback. They were 31st in pass rush win rate. They were also 32nd, according to PFF, in their pass rush grade. So the Panthers were pathetic, really bad. Now, what did they do to improve? They let go of their best edge rusher, Jadeveon Clowney. Not ideal, right? He was pretty good last year on a per-game basis. You look at his win rates in the pass game, the run game, he was actually pretty good last year. His pressures, not bad, right? Still a pretty good player. Of course, with Jadeveon Clowney, it's a money thing. It's a work ethic thing. It's a leadership thing sometimes. It's his age. Is he worth it? They wanted to go in a different direction. So they went to the draft. But they didn't address this position in the first round. They went 2nd round, 3rd round, mid-round selections with this position. And I understand that because they wanted a weapon for Bryce Young in the first round. Like, I get the overall picture, but it doesn't help this video, right? So they're counting on Scorton in particular, which I believe is the correct pronunciation of his name, out of Texas A&M. He was a borderline first-round prospect. He has a lot of things that people like. He was actually awesome in the previous year, in 2023, in college. So he does have potential. But is he going to make that immediate impact that they need as a sack artist? Because they need pressure on the quarterback. Derek Brown is a beast. He's an animal, right? He's one of the best run defenders in football. But as a sack guy, he's had 3 sacks. That's like the peak of his career. 2, 3, that's what he does every year. I wouldn't expect Derek Brown to have 8, 9 sacks, right? He's one of the best run defenders, and he even does get pressure on the quarterback, so he's going to help the others around him. But he is not a guy that's going to finish, okay? So they don't have a lot of finishers. Is it DJ Wonham, who's more of a edge 3 than an edge 1, in my opinion? That's not great, right? Tershawn Wharton maybe could benefit from Derek Brown on the inside, signing him from the Chiefs. He was pretty good in that playoff stretch. He was a sub-package pass rusher. I could see how maybe he fits on this defense, a unique body type, unique player at the defensive tackle position, great quickness there. Pat Jones is a hybrid playmaker, useful in blitzing schemes up front, former Viking as well. Bobby Brown was brought in to help that run defense with his size. I still believe they have guys like Ashawn Robinson on their roster as well. They do have quite a bit of depth. Depth really isn't the issue here for the Panthers. So they're going to find who they want in the front seven, but I just don't think they have many great players or even above average players. They have a bunch of guys who have played snaps, but they don't necessarily have enough studs to make a difference outside of Derek Brown. Who's getting to the quarterback off the edge? I mean, this is an absolute massive question for the Panthers if they want to be anything this season. So they still, for me, rank as the worst unit in football across the defensive line. At number 31, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons, just like Carolina, I'd like to be a quarterback in the NFC South. I'll just say that much, guys. I'd like to be a quarterback in the NFC South. We'll see why a little bit more in just a minute. But the Atlanta Falcons, they tried to improve this unit. I give them some credit, but they went with the long-term vision over the immediate impact, just like Carolina, right? The Panthers went to the draft with the mid-round picks. The Falcons went to the draft with the early picks, 2 first-round picks spent on one position. And you would think that would catapult this team further up this list. But the question is, are these guys going to be good? After all, they're prospects. And honestly, Jalen Walker was not my favorite prospect in the class because he was an off-ball linebacker who was pretty much a projection to play on the edge. And to me, he didn't have the overwhelming physical traits that I'm looking for at the edge position. So I'm a tad concerned about his deployment in the NFL, but we'll see. Raheem Morris is a defensive guy. He should have a vision for him. James Pierce does have pure pin-your-ears-back pass rushing capabilities, but he also does lack some physicality and also a little bit of that bend naturally that you would look for in an upper echelon prospect at this position. So Pierce, and I think he even maybe had some off the field stuff, but that's besides the point. Walker and Pierce have to contribute right away, especially in big third down situations. And I could see the Falcons deploying multiple players at the edge position across the defensive front, using Walker as like an extra linebacker, blitzer type, kind of like a Frankie Louvu-esque player for this defense potentially. And then I could see Leonard Floyd being involved here, who I thought, yes, he plays a lot. He's consistent. He typically puts up good sack production, but he was not great on the Niners last year. Like, a lot of his overall production came through volume because they needed him to play a lot. And to me, he's not the same player he used to be. He's solid. He's fine. He can play, but I don't think he's a difference-making player, okay? Basically, he replaces Matt Judon, essentially. And maybe he's a bit better. But, I mean, like, Judon was really bad for them last year. He did not live up to what they expected. But still, I don't think Floyd at this point, at this age, is going to be a difference maker. David Onyemata also has regressed a little bit. He's not quite that hulking mammoth of a run defender that he once was. Morgan Fox might give a little bit of a spark here, but he's nothing special either. So I just look across the defensive front, and I don't see any stud. Not one singular stud. With the Panthers, I can at least say they have Derek Brown. You know, I like that the Falcons have invested a lot into the defensive front, but I don't know if Walker or Pierce are a Derek Brown-esque player. I would bet against no, but I do feel like they have more solids, right? David Onyemata, Walker and Pierce, Fox and Floyd are decent. So they were also more capable last year. They've been decent against the run in the past couple of seasons. They did let go of Grady Jarrett. That is a big significant deal. So they did try to reshape this entire look, this entire feel of the defensive line. They'll have plenty of new starters. We'll see if it works out. It's very young. It's very questionable, but there's potential. I'll give them that. There's potential here. So at number 31, the Atlanta Falcons. At number 30, the New Orleans Saints. Like I said, I'd like to be a quarterback, specifically Baker Mayfield, in this division, because these are the 3 worst defensive lines in the NFL, arguably, of course. I would expect most people to have these 3 units in the bottom 6 at the very least, right? It's debatable, of course. It's an opinion, of course, but they're pretty bad overall. Now, the Saints unit, I don't think is that terrible, depending on what they can get out of the defensive tackle position. Brzee is a really interesting player where he's had some good pressure and sack production, but he has not been consistent or really capable against the run. On the flip side, they bring in Devon Godshaw from the Patriots, who I know well, is a pure nose tackle run defender who does not bring anything to the pass rush department. So defensive tackle is a bit of a hit and miss, and a bit of a, you're really solid or good as a rusher, or you're really good against the run potentially, or you can do one or the other, but you can't really do both. So they're going to look to, of course, rotate and see how that goes. They have plenty of NFL caliber names as backups. It's just that none of those guys are really difference makers, in my opinion. You look at the edge position, I think they still have a decent unit here. Carl Granderson is a pretty good player. But as an edge one on a team, he's not exactly ideal because just like Derek Brown for the Panthers, like neither of these guys are super stud pass rush specialists. Of course, Derek Brown's a defensive tackle / nose tackle. Granderson is an edge. So you would expect like 10 plus sacks out of your edge one consistently. He's not exactly that. He's a great run defender. He sets the edge with the best of them. He's got great length, and his ability to create pressure is there. Chase Young last year, I thought had a sneaky season last season. He was, I think, top 15 in pressures overall. It's just that Chase Young is very inconsistent, in my opinion, in really all aspects of the game. I feel like sometimes he's invisible as a pass rusher. I feel like sometimes he takes poor angles in the run game. I feel like maybe I'm scarred by that one run he had with the Niners where it just didn't feel like he played very well at all, or just the numerous injuries have maybe taken an impact on what I believe the player is. He's still got the size and the athleticism. He doesn't really have that pure bend. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that puts up a ton of sacks ever, but he does play with good power. He can be a reliable starter. But again, Granderson and Young are both kind of players that neither have super upside as pass rushers. Cam Jordan is still on the roster. He is not anything close to what he used to be, but he's a capable edge 3 in a rotation. He's certainly savvy, smart, a leader, and can still stop the run. And you throw him in there in a rotation, especially in sub packages, play him inside, play him outside. You can do some different things with him. Intrigued by maybe the coaching switch and how he gets rejuvenated there. So the Saints, I don't mind the edge rotation. I think it's fine. It's solid. It's better than what we've talked about previously. The defensive tackles are a bit suspect, but it's not the worst defensive line I've ever seen. I've certainly seen worse. It's just that there's not a lot of potential. There's not a lot of ceiling with this unit. It's pretty much a floor unit because it's relatively old. So at number 30, the Saints. At number 29, the Los Angeles Chargers, which might be the unit that surprises some people why they're so low, because the Chargers did have a good defense last year. And they did have a couple of stats that do stand out. Sacks, they were 6th in the NFL, 12th in pass rush grade, and 7th in run stop win rate. Now, they did have some pretty poor numbers like pressures, 22nd, run yards per attempt, 27th, and then also pass rush win rate was 22nd. So they did have some good metrics, some bad metrics, a little bit over the, all over the map. But I look at this purely from a talent standpoint, and I don't see how this is going to be a good upper echelon above average unit. Your best player by far is an old man, Khalil Mack. You are relying on Khalil Mack to be an absolute prime version of himself, which is kind of unfair, right? Last year, the Chargers, I think their leading sacker was Thule, and he had like 7 sacks. So this is not a unit that sacks the quarterback. This is not a unit that makes a lot of game-changing plays. Against the run, they weren't great overall, right? Really, their strength came in their coverages and their scheme and their ability to confuse quarterbacks and not give up big plays. I think that's where the Chargers were really good on defense last year. They lost their best run defender in Poona Ford. They lost Joey Bosa and his potential. I know that he hasn't exactly been the player that he used to be, but he still played some games and some snaps for them last year, obviously. And so it takes away from the potential of Mack and Bosa healthy together on the field, along with, Thule as well. And then having Bud Dupree as like an extra spare handy player. Well, now he's more of the edge 3 player. So Bud Dupree, who isn't exactly great any longer, still can play some snaps and set the edge and maybe be effective as a blitzer. But, he's nothing even close to what he was at his peak. I just look at this unit and like, Tart was pretty good for them, but he's never been a high impact regular starter on a team. He's usually a rotation run defending piece. He's not an every down player. Now, maybe he has a Poona Ford moment this year, potentially. Deshaun Hand was decent last year, again, as a rotation piece. But their interior, like they lack a stud, they lack a difference maker, they lack a good pass rusher. Ogbonnia is certainly not that. And I just don't see this unit being extremely dominant in any way, shape, or form. Not against the run, not against the pass. I just don't know. Maybe better against the run than the pass. Like, if you're counting on Khalil Mack to have 15 sacks at this point, I mean, that's just a lot to ask for. So I think this is one of the most overlooked storylines of the offseason. The fact that the Chargers let go of 2 of their most talented front 7 players, and they didn't replace them, really. They did draft a couple guys in the 3rd or 4th round, but that's expecting a lot out of 3rd and 4th round picks to step up and play a role. Maybe those guys are spectacular. Maybe they're gems of the draft. Who knows? But to me, that's hard to rank and hard to calibrate. So I have at number 29, a leaky Chargers front at number 29. At number 28, the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders would have ranked much higher if Christian Wilkins was a part of this unit and healthy. Obviously, we're hearing some pretty interesting things out of the Raiders camp about why they let go of Christian Wilkins. You guys can talk about that in the comments if you like. But this unit pretty much lacks a defensive tackle that can make a difference. Adam Butler actually had a good year last year. And congratulations to Adam Butler for returning to the NFL, first of all, and actually playing at a pretty high level. Adam Butler used to be on the Patriots teams that won Super Bowls, and he left the NFL because of health concerns, like serious health concerns. And he returned with the Raiders, and he's been a pretty good player. Like, he was always pretty good in pass rush situations, and he was always deep on the Patriots depth chart and always effective on sub packages and 3rd downs and stunts and blitz packages and things. But he actually was pretty good against the run last year. Like, he's a decent player. But without a Christian Wilkins beside him, I think they very much lack a top, 40 defensive tackle. Like Fotu Lealu, I believe is how you would say his name. These guys are not it for me. I mean, these guys are not it. So they're going to have to find somebody. I don't know if they're going to go sign a free agent. They're going to go trade for somebody. But Adam Butler alone is not going to get it done. So this is one of the weaker defensive tackle groups in the entire NFL. Now, I do really like their edge trio. I think Max Crosby is obviously one of the best defensive linemen in football. He plays a ton of snaps, and he almost never comes off the field. So you have to bake that in. There's a lot counting on Max Crosby to absolutely terrorize opposing quarterbacks. Without him, I mean, this defensive line falls off the face of the planet. But Max Crosby on that unit obviously makes everybody better around him. They need more out of Tyree Wilson this year. They need him to be a good pass rusher, potentially from the inside. They need him to be able to set the edge on early downs. And Malcolm Kuntz does return, hopefully healthy. He looked like a prime breakout candidate for this team the last couple of years. 2 years ago, he actually had a really good season where he was arguably a top 32 pass rusher in football that season. So I do like that edge rotation where they can rotate Kuntz and Wilson. They can maybe even flirt with all three of those edge rushers playing on sub-package situations. I'd be intrigued by that. But their defensive tackle position is so poor, and the fact that Kuntz is returning from a major injury, these things are all taken into account. Tyree Wilson has been a bit inconsistent, so the Raiders are at number 28. They need a defensive tackle, like, really badly. At number 27, the Washington Commanders are at number 27. The Commanders did boost their stock here a little bit with Von Miller. I would have arguably said that they had the worst edge position in all of football previous to signing Von Miller. If you do dive into Von Miller's statistics last season, his advanced metrics, his pressures, his per play ability, he was actually very effective for Buffalo on sub-package third down, specific pass rush situations. His numbers were pretty flawless, but that's pretty much what he's going to be. He's essentially going to be Dante Fowler for this defense this year. He's essentially going to be Dante Fowler. That's what he is. So he's, at this point, no longer expected to play on early downs. He's going to play in sub packages. He's going to rush off the edge. He's going to pin his ears back. He's going to get after it. Now with Dan Quinn, there's always that extra flavor of what he could do with Von Miller and potentially use his quickness and use his pass rush skill and how he could align him and how he could use all these different guys. So what I do like about the Commanders is that they do have quite a bit of depth, quite a bit of guys that have played, and quite a bit of different type of bodies. So that's what I do like about the Commanders that separate this unit from the units I've already discussed. Even if they don't have a Khalil Mack or they don't have a Max Crosby, right, or a Derek Brown, they don't have that caliber of player, but they have plenty of solid to good players. Daron Payne obviously has the potential to be a spectacular defensive tackle or nose tackle at any point. There is rumors that he could move back to more of a nose tackle role this season. That would be probably pretty big time for him. He does have that upside, especially in a contract year, to be a difference maker for them, but he is very inconsistent. Very inconsistent. And then Dorrance Armstrong is very consistent. He's the opposite, but he's not like an upper echelon edge one. He is their edge one, but he's like a 6-7 sack type guy. He's like an edge 3 on Dallas once upon a time, right? Signed to Washington, he became their edge 1. He's good all around, like good length, solid pass rusher, can be a difference maker in certain moments, like against Detroit. I thought he had a really good game, but he's not like super special. So they are counting on Von Miller, even at his older age, to be like their leading sacker or their leading big time, big play pressure guy. That's what they're counting on, along with Dorrance Armstrong, to be consistent in that facet. And then they need more out of Payne. They're hoping that Javon Kinlaw can replace Jonathan Allen and give them a spark on the inside as a great athlete that he is. But he's been extremely inconsistent all over his career. He's never graded well. He's always been a guy that some plays he'll flash power, flash strength, be really effective. And other times he'll just not feel like he's not even playing, or like he's just giving up big runs. Like, so Kinlaw was not worth the money, not worth the contract, in my opinion. I did like the pickup of Eddie Goldman, who I do feel like could help them a little bit in some depth. I do feel like Newton needs to take a step forward, and there is some promise from Commanders fans out there. They seem to like him. He was obviously, I think, a second-round pick. So, yeah, they need more out of him this year. And then Clelin Ferrell, Dietrich Wise, these guys both have like good run defense capabilities. They're both longer, bigger defensive ends, and they do have the ability to set the edge, so overall, I think the Commanders went for the approach of getting better against the run this offseason by adding bulk with guys like Eddie Goldman, by having a deeper, bigger defensive tackle rotation, by having a longer edge rotation, guys like Armstrong with Farrell, with Wise, right? So they have plenty of that size and bulk to be able to stop the run, and then bring in Von Miller on those third downs to be able to bulk up the pass rush. So I understand the goal. I just kind of feel like there's not a lot here in terms of above average talent, especially if Daron Payne does not prove to be the guy that he's been at his peak. So at number 27, an intriguing, interesting unit that could make or break the team, but a unit that I still feel like needs plenty of answers to their questions. At number 26, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans have, in my opinion, a really awesome interior, and that's what catapults them to number 26. But their edge position is very suspect. Arden Key is their edge one. That's pretty much Dorrance Armstrong, right? Like, that's the same conversation. Like, Arden Key, Dorrance Armstrong, I love them as edge threes. Maybe even don't mind them as edge twos. But as edge ones, number one guy off the edge to get to the quarterback, I don't know. You're asking for a lot. He's never put up that level of production. He's been good. He's actually very underrated compared to how he came out and began his career. It took him some time, but he became a good player. It's just, he's a useful player, right? That's the best way to put it. But he's not a stud, you know? But they do have Jeff Simmons, who's a stud, and he's arguably, you know, the best run defender at his position, right next to Derek Brown. And if he's not, Tavondre Sweat is getting there. He's a brick wall. Now, Simmons and Sweat together, you're not running the ball up the middle. Like, that's what I love about Tennessee, is they clearly have a defined strength of their defensive line. You're not running the ball up the middle. Like, you're absolutely not. Simmons can dominate his matchups on the inside. But I think the question I have is they don't really have another guy that can take advantage of Simmons getting doubled all that often, right? Harold Landry left, which only made them weaker, in my opinion, from a sack or an upside or a playmaker vantage point, right? They did draft a kid that's a little raw in Oladejo. We'll see what he can bring. But Sebastian Joseph Day also graded extremely well for the Titans last year. I believe he graded as like a top 30 defensive tackle. So overall, they have three guys that, according to PFF, you know, that's a pretty stable defensive tackle trio. And Sebastian Joseph Day has always been a very solid run defender. But again, that's run defense, run defense, run defense. Pass rush is leaving something to be desired if you're counting on Draymond Jones to get it done, right? If you're counting on Jahad Ward, who they recently picked up, who's a big-bodied edge player. Again, they have a lot of this size. They have a lot of this run-stopping capability. Maybe they're counting on blitzing a lot of teams and getting after with pressure that way, but that's not exactly desirable, in my opinion. You want to have a four-man rush that can get after it. And to me, the Titans are just relying a lot on Jeffrey Simmons to get it done, a lot on Arden Key to be basically their best pass rusher. And that's just, to me, that's just asking too much. So I am not sold on this edge rotation. I'm not sold on their pass rush as a whole. And I know they're going for like this big-bodied defensive front with Draymond Jones and Jahad Ward and Sweat and Simmons. They love their size and their bulk. But at the end of the day, I need a little quickness and a little bend to get to the quarterback. And I don't think the Titans have that. At number 25, the Chicago Bears. The Bears are at number 25. The Bears are interesting because they definitely addressed their defensive line this offseason. It didn't play great last year. They were 29th in run yards per attempt allowed. They were 29th in run stop win rate, and they were 24th in pass rush win rate. So they were not great last year, actually. But I feel like this unit did get a little bit better because Andrew Billings does come back and he's healthy for that depth at defensive tackle. He's a solid run defender. They did sign Odenigbo from the Colts. They did also sign Grady Jarrett from the Falcons. I think that Gervon Dexter is an extremely underrated defensive tackle, and I ranked him inside my top 32. So there's a promising upside younger player there. Montez Sweat is a good edge one, in my opinion. Not spectacular. Good. Top 32 player. He needs to do more in terms of sack the quarterback, big plays, playmaker. Last year, he kind of disappointed in that area, right? I think he only had like 5 sacks, right? He had a pretty bad, big-time playmaker season for them, and they need more out of him. Now, one of the promising aspects is that they do bring in Dennis Allen, and from a coaching perspective, you know, I could see them getting a little bit better from a scheme perspective. scheming pressure, putting their right guys in the right situations. So I do like the Bears in terms of they have two guys on their defensive line that I ranked in the top 32 at their position, defensive tackle and edge. I thought they made nice improvements. I think Grady Jarrett as a D tackle 2 in rotation with Andrew Billings, that's very solid to me. So I don't mind their defensive tackle position. I just don't think they're overwhelming or spectacular, especially as a pass rush unit. I don't see any of these guys as 10 sack players. Dennybo, also longer, bigger defensive end, the Cam Jordan type that Dennis Allen really likes. He's going to be very good against the run, right? So they're counting a lot on their secondary to be the unit that really carries this defense. They're counting on their coverage, and they're counting on their looks and their blitz packages on certain situations for Dennis Allen to get it done. Again, I think that they're solid. I just don't think they're spectacular as a pass rush unit. I do think, though, they'll be improved as a run defense, so that's something to look forward to. I have the Bears at number 25. At number 24, the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville is tricky because I think their talent is better than their production. Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker are both inside my top 22 edge rushers in the NFL. Trayvon Walker, I think, is honestly underrated. He became so overrated as a prospect that he's become underrated in the NFL with 2 consecutive 10-sack seasons and becoming one of the best run defenders at his position. Josh Hines-Allen is one of the better sack specialists and pass rushers at his position, especially from a quickness and a speed perspective. So they're a very nice complement between the quickness, speed, and bend of Hines-Allen and the size and length of Trayvon Walker. So I like that combination. They need more out of Eric Armstead from the inside because their defensive tackle position is pretty bad. Like Devon Hamilton, he has a lot of run stops and a lot of volume last year. He actually was among the top of the NFL in run stops and being effective in the run game. But his grading and his per play ability and just overall, actually just being a brick wall, that was kind of ineffective. So Hamilton and Armstead, can Hamilton be that run stop guy that they really need? Can Armstead be that pass rusher from the interior that they're looking for? I don't know. Emmanuel Ogbah has stuck around the NFL for quite some time. Haven't really seen him in this kind of defense, I feel like, in a minute. I don't remember where he played last year. I can't really remember, to be honest, but he's been around the NFL for forever. And I feel like he's been okay as like an edge 3, edge 4. Like that's the ideal role for him. They also have Mason Smith, who they spent pretty good capital on once upon a time. They don't have good depth. Their edge depth is not very good. Their D-tackle depth is suspect. That's something that definitely hurts them. I love their edge duo. I do wish they were used in more creative ways, right? I do wish they were used more than just straight up rushing the quarterback. It feels like this is one of the least creative defensive fronts in the NFL. So that's what I'm searching for more here, right? 32nd in pass rush win rate is terrible, right? That needs to improve. And I think a lot of that comes down to 28th in pressures, right? That comes down to, I think they need a little bit more flair, a little bit more creativity, a little bit more spark in using these players. There's no way that Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen and Eric Armstead, that these guys should not be better in the pass rush department from an overall team point of view. So at number 24, Jacksonville. At number 23, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are a unit that frustratingly rank at number 23 because they've spent first round pick after first round pick after first round pick at addressing this defensive line. They have not 1, not 2, not 3, but I believe 4 first round picks, maybe just 3. I don't recall if Kenny Clark was a first round pick, but regardless, he was a premier player nonetheless. So on top of that, 3 first round picks. Okay. So Rashawn Gary is, I think, an absolute stud against the run. One of the most powerful, overwhelming edge players in football. But he does lack consistency as a pass rusher, and he does lack that big spark on big downs in big moments against big teams when he needs to be the guy to sack the quarterback, when he needs to be the guy to get the strip sack. This is my point about the Packers. In recent years, their pass rush has not been there when they really need it. In their division games against the Vikings, the Lions, it's not even like relevant. Their run defense last year was actually really good. They were 6th in run stop win rate. They were 3rd in rushing yards per attempt allowed. They were very good against the run, but they did lose one of the premier run defenders in the NFL in TJ Slayton, who left to Cincinnati. He led the NFL in run stop win rate at his position. So they lost him. So they're expecting more out of Devontae Wyatt, who isn't known for his run stopping. Devontae Wyatt is a very good pass rusher on a per play basis, though. Him and Kenny Clark, healthy, are a really good duo inside. And honestly, they don't have an edge 2 on their roster. Like, Rashawn Gary is a good edge 1, but if every team is looking to chip him, I mean, they need some help out of Lucas Van Ness. This guy needs to step up. He has not developed yet. He has not been the player they would have hoped for. Kingsley's fine, but he's more of an edge 3 than an edge 2. They need Van Ness to step up big time other than just holding the edge in the run game. He needs to provide spark as a pass rusher. And there are questions about Kenny Clark in terms of his age, his health. Is he still the same player? And then Brooks is decent as a depth defensive tackle and could maybe take that TJ Slayton role as a bigger run defender rotation with Devontae Wyatt. But man, I don't think the depth is what it was, right? Remember when this team had Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith and all these guys? Like, they don't have that anymore, right? And Rashawn Gary on top of that, they had a deep unit. They don't have the depth they used to have. They don't have the spark off the edge or the pass rush upside that they used to have. And really, some of their best players like Kenny Clark are getting older. Devontae Wyatt needs to be more consistent, right? Lucas Van Ness needs to be better. There's a lot of questions here. They have the names, but they don't have the production. So at number 23, the Packers. At number 22, the Jets. The Jets are not the front that they were, right? They had plenty of depth. They had plenty of upside in recent years. They're no longer that good. And I do wonder how the scheme change going from more of a wide 9-based team, a Robert Saleh approach, to going to a Lions approach where I think they'll be more based on stopping the run instead of just pinning our ears back and getting full speed ahead at the quarterback. So I think the Jets are going to be more based on that. But that being said, do they have the personnel to pull it off? We will see. Obviously, Quinnen Williams is spectacular. He's awesome. But their defensive tackle position beside him is one of the biggest question marks of their camp right now. Derek Nandi was signed to a big contract, but he has apparently not looked great. And also, like, he's just not great in general. Like, he's always benefited from playing beside Chris Jones. He's just okay. I think he's a solid run defender first. Not much upside as a pass rusher. He's fine, right? But he's a replaceable player that they signed to an egregious contract, in my opinion. Byron Cohert, he's, in my opinion, not even like a guy that I would think about starting on a typical NFL team. He's like he's like a D tackle 4, like capable depth, but not a guy I'd want to play an important role. So their D tackle position outside of Quinnen is a huge problem, okay? The edge position is actually pretty good if Jermaine Johnson is healthy. The question is he healthy? He's coming off a major Achilles tear, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know what he's going to look like, right? Like, he looked like a really good player. As a first-round pick, he put up a really good second season in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. He is extremely powerful, and I love that potential combination of him and Will McDonald, 2 first-round picks. Will McDonald, he's going to be their leading sack artist. He is a sack artist. Last year, he had 6 sacks in the first 4 games. He had 10.5 by the end of the year. He's a guy that can win in a variety of ways: length, quickness, bend. He is a sack guy, but he did struggle a little bit with setting the edge and playing strong and powerful in the run game. But he did take a leap forward in year 2. I'd expect even more out of him in year 3. But there are major questions about the health of Johnson, about the D tackle alongside Quinnen Williams, about Michael Clemens even. He had some nice moments in the NFL as a rotation edge. He's not much of a pass rusher, but he's a guy that should be an effective edge setter for them. Maybe better in this style of defense. We will see. But I don't know, man. Like, I think they certainly have some big-time talent, 3 first-round picks. But at the same time, I don't know. There's a lot of questions about it. So McDonald, Williams, Johnson looks decent, but I want to see how they look under Aaron Glenn. At number 22, at number 21, the Detroit Lions. The Lions defensive line, I think for some might rank higher, and that's fine. I totally understand that. I thought about them around the 18, 19 range as well, and I think you could take them all the way up until like 17, 16. But I just have questions about Detroit, and I don't necessarily love how they've built their defensive line, which is a personal opinion. So, Alim McNeill is their second best player on their defensive line outside of Aiden Hutchinson. McNeill is hurt for a good portion of this season. Aiden Hutchinson is returning from injury. So their two best players on their defensive line are injured or returning from injury. That's not ideal. Next, DJ Reader, who they signed to a pretty significant contract. I don't think played to that contract last year. I don't think he's the same player. Still a good run defender, but not much pass rushing upside as we saw last year. Maybe he'll be a better player, though, a year removed from the major injury. We'll see. I'll give him some credit because he used to be very good, especially as a big-time nose tackle stopping the run, right? And that activated McNeill as more of a pass rusher. Tyleik Williams is also a big, huge, humongous Tavondre Sweat-like prospect who is going to be a brick wall against the run. And they're looking to improve their run defense because last year it wasn't as good as you would have thought. It was 22nd in rush yards per attempt allowed, okay? But on top of that, they were only 25th in pass rush win rate. And in my opinion, they're just too reliant on Aiden Hutchinson to get to the quarterback. As a pass rush unit, they don't have a lot of upside outside of Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport, can I even rely on him at this point? Freakish upside, freakish traits, very unreliable, always injured. We'll see if he can bring something. This front office loves this guy, okay? It's because a lot of Saints elements here, right? Josh Pascal is not a very good edge 3 in my opinion, and whoever else fills that spot, they don't have great depth at edge. So as soon as Hutchinson goes down, there's a problem there. I think they should consider bringing back Za'Darius Smith. That would catapult this defensive line up the list because I'm big into depth, especially at edge. And if you do lose your stud, you are in big trouble, as we saw last year. Levi is a pretty good pass rusher from the inside. He's not a bad player. I think he's a good rotation piece to have on your defensive line. I love that re-signing for them. But again, he's not a huge difference maker or dial changer for me. So the Lions, once McNeill comes back, I think at least they'll have Hutchinson and McNeill who can affect the quarterback. But at the beginning of the year, I don't think Tyleik Williams is that guy. I think they'll be counting a lot more on Levi to get it done and Davenport hopefully to bring a spark. But I am not a fan of their edge position as a whole outside of Aiden. And obviously Hutchinson is a difference maker, game changer, all that stuff. And if you really take like a large degree of your ranking into that one stud, then I understand ranking them higher. I just like a little bit more depth. So the Lions, not a bad line by any means. We'll see also how they change their approach. Are they still going to be blitz heavy, man coverage heavy? Are they going to play the same? Or are they going to play different under the new defensive coordinator? We will see. At number 21. At number 20, the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Cincinnati Bengals are at number 20. The Bengals, I actually think are kind of slept on because I think a lot of people would expect them to be in the bottom 5, the bottom 7. But I expect them to be greatly improved this year. And I think they actually have top 15 upside in this defensive line. First of all, Trey Hendrickson, whenever he does sign his contract, he will eventually, is arguably the best pass rusher in football. He led the NFL in pressures and led the NFL in sacks. There's really nothing else I have to say there. He's an absolute dog, and he is superhuman in his work rate, his ability to go down after down, snap after snap, and being the only guy that can really get to the quarterback over the last couple of years and still get it done. That is a ridiculous player, okay? BJ Hill is a very reliable, very solid, good defensive tackle, okay? Especially against the run. TJ Slayton, like I said when I brought him up with the Packers, the number 1 player in run stop win rate last season. So he greatly improves their run defense on the inside. Him and Hill are potentially a dominant run defense inside, just as DJ Reader and Hill were once upon a time. So look out for that. Also, Shamar Stewart is a freak. If he is as good as his measurables, this D-line has massive upside because Shamar Stewart is going to be good against the run right away because he is so strong, so powerful, there's almost no way that he isn't good against the run. He might lack a little bit in terms of pass rushing because he doesn't have a plan. He needs to work on his hands, and he needs a lot of work there. But him and Hendrickson could kind of counteract each other or help each other out. And I think Stewart is not really being relied on to be a great pass rusher. Okay, but then they also have guys like Osai who can come in and rush the quarterback. Miles Murphy is a first-round pick formerly. Can they get more out of him in a new scheme under a new coach with new coaching? We'll see. Miles Murphy, first-round pick out of Clemson. Chris Jenkins, and they also have another kid at defensive tackle who they drafted last year in the mid-rounds. So they have plenty of depth, right? And they have guys entering year 2. I think they've got a pretty good line change of players that they can utilize. I think it's very underrated. So, yeah, premier edge rusher, very solid defensive tackle group, and they have a first-round pick added onto that premier edge rusher. I think they're going to be much better than last year on the defensive front. I really like this upside, especially against the run. I think they'll be greatly improved. So, yeah, Trey Hendrickson, just sign, and I think this will be one of the more underrated defensive lines in 2025. At number 19, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are kind of similarly built to the Bengals. They just have, instead of one absolute stud and maybe a tad bit less depth, they have 2 studs, right? That's Karlaftis and Chris Jones. The Chiefs, though, in terms of their defensive front, they're very much reliant on Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. They lost a couple pieces on the defensive line. Specifically, the one that comes to mind is Tershawn Wharton. They lost him this offseason to be that rotation defensive tackle piece. Their defensive ends last year at edge 2 and edge 3 in Mike Dana and Charles Omenihu did not play near to the level of their ability last season. They did not play well at all. In 2 years ago, 2023, they were 2 really good players for them. They played really well. Omenihu, you could partly blame that on injury. Mike Dana, same sort of thing. They both kind of working back from injuries, on and off in the lineup, that sort of deal. And neither of them could really give that secondary presence to Chris Jones or George Karlaftis in the pass rush department. So they need more out of them to help replace Tershawn Wharton and then also just to get after it from the opposite edge. Their other defensive tackle spot is a big question. They let go of Derek Nandi, who was a solid run defender for them, and added some size to their front. Mike Pennell is old, but he seems to get it done for them specifically. But counting on him to be anything more than a rotation run defender is asking a lot. They are asking Norman Lott to potentially be their new Tershawn Wharton. He has some upside out of Tennessee as a rookie second-round pick, I believe. So he's got something there. Maybe he can be the guy beside Chris Jones to get after it on pass rush situations. But overall, I just think that they really lack, their third and fourth starter, is very suspect. Is it Norman Lott? Is Dana or Omenihu the guy? Are they washed now? Are they the same players they were a couple years ago? Is Pennell still any good? And then they brought in Jerry Tillery, who I guess has some spark at pass rushing capability, but, he's been a bust. So the Chiefs, I think it's Chris Jones, George Karlaftis led heavily. If either of those guys go down, they're in a bit of trouble on the defensive front. Obviously, they're so creative with their blitzes. They're so creative with their scheme, their ability to specifically put Chris Jones in situations where he can win. So Spags makes them a lot better than their individual talent. But here, I have them at number 19. I'm also a little bit concerned on their run defense this year. We'll see if they're still that same unit that they were the last couple of years. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals at number 18. The Cardinals are one of the most improved defensive fronts in all of football, and they're one of the deepest. I really appreciate the depth of this unit. So they signed Josh Sweat, big-time contract. He is a good player, and even going back to watching him, he was even better than I remember last year. I really like Josh Sweat. I think he's well worth the money to impact the edge for the Cardinals, and I think he's a great fit for Jonathan Gannon. We've already seen how he fits in this defense. He's got 10-plus sack upside, great length, good pass rusher, very capable run defender, just very solid edge one. Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson are going to make them a professional defensive line because they were pathetic at stopping the run. They had very little size on the inside. Calais Campbell was the best run defender in football last year, according to PFF, at defensive tackle. Dalvin Tomlinson is a huge, massive nose tackle body who also adds some pass rushing flair He's been a pretty good pass rusher throughout his career, and last year had a good season there. Baron Browning is a really underrated player. I expect him to play more full-time snaps. I think he could be more of a rotation piece, but he's good when he gets his opportunity to get off the edge. He's got quickness, speed, bend. Zaven Collins was excellent in the run game last year, graded very well there. So I could see some rotation with Collins and Browning on the edge. Opposite Josh Sweat, I like that idea. Walter Nolan, first-round pick rookie as the third rotation defensive tackle. You have to love that. He also has great first step and quickness, so there's some upside there. They have a former first-round pick sitting on the bench in Darius Robinson, and they have other names that I haven't even mentioned. But the Cardinals, I really like how they've envisioned this unit to work, right? They are a little old, right? Bringing in both Campbell and Tomlinson is a short-term solution, but for this year, it makes them a lot more professional in both the run and the pass game, and it allows them to rely less on the schemes and the smoke and mirrors and the blitzes that they've been relying on. It allows them to actually get after it without always having to rely on creativity. So at number 18, a deep Cardinals unit that's slept on. At number 17, my New England Patriots defensive line, which is also one of the most improved units in football. They signed Harold Landry to a big contract to reunite with Mike Vrabel. They signed Milton Williams to the franchise's largest contract, including Tom Brady. They also get back Christian Barmore to full health. Keon White enters a new season, potentially a better one for him. Kayvon Chason is one of the sneakiest pass rush signings of the offseason. And they also signed, I believe, Tonga is his name, out of Arizona. Was it Arizona? I can't quite recall, but he's strictly a run-defending first depth defensive tackle. But I look at the Patriots' defensive front, and I didn't even include Anthony Jennings, who's one of the best run-defending edges in football. The last 2 years, he's been at the top of the league in run stops at his position. Not a great pass rusher, but a pretty interesting body that the Patriots can weaponize in blitzes and then also in the run game. So the Patriots don't have an absolute superstar. They don't have a Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, but they do have two guys that could enter that category in Christian Barmore and Milton Williams, and possibly even Keon White. They could enter the star category. Maybe not superstar category, but star category. I'd also consider Milton Williams and Christian Barmore to be very good players. And they're both very good pass rushers as defensive tackles, right? Both of them have 8+ sack upside. Barmore has already achieved it. Milton Williams, if you include the playoffs, basically achieved it last year. But Milton Williams was the number one pass rush graded defensive tackle in football, and he was incredible in the playoffs. At the Super Bowl, all the way around, he was a force. He's an absolute beast at getting to the quarterback. Barmore, he's going to play the Jeffrey Simmons role in this defense. He can eat against the run, and he's powerful and quick against the pass. That is going to be a deadly duo. One of the best defensive tackle duos in all of football immediately, right? Maybe even the best this year. Harold Landry, I expect to be better in this scheme because he was taken away from it in Tennessee last year. He still put up 9 sacks. He's put up 9+ sacks 4 times. He was also one of the best run defenders in football at the edge position last year. Good caliber edge one, not an excellent one, but definitely NFL edge one capable. Keon White, he's like a Trey Flowers who used to play for the Patriots. He can play inside, he can play outside, he can set the edge on early downs, move inside and affect the quarterback potentially as well. But he was having a really good year last year at the start, but then teams kind of honed in on him without Christian Barmore, and he just wasn't able to take on the best player on a defensive line role. Now he might be the fourth. So that's something to be excited about. Kayvon Chason had a great end to his season last year, I think for the Raiders. He really developed as a sack guy, as a speed rusher. So he could be a sub-package player. They have Farms, they have Jennings, who I've mentioned. They have some younger guys who are developing as draft picks. So the Patriots, I think they're going to be great against the run, considering Landry, Barmore, White, and Jennings are elite against the run. So that is great. And that will put them in great situations to get to the quarterback. And I like how their personnel could potentially be utilized in those situations. So at number 17, my Patriots. At number 16, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have a sneaky good defensive front. They're always awesome against the run. There's no debate about that. I mean, having Vita Vea, that's probably reason number one. He takes up half of the offensive line by himself. He's an absolute mammoth, and he is the most athletic 350-pound or whatever he is guy you'll ever see. But yeah, Vita Vea is an absolute game changer. He is a unique player. Like, that's the only way to say. Like, he is a unique game-wrecking player. He's the only player like him maybe in the entire league. The only one that comes to mind is Dexter Lawrence, just in terms of, like, similarity, right? Yaya Diaby is probably the most underrated edge player in football. He was top 5 in run stops, and he was also top 10 in pressures. He had a spectacular year last year. He's very well utilized under Todd Bowles. He needs to finish more of his pressures to sacks. He needs to convert that more, but he is a really solid player, like a top 20 edge rusher in the NFL. Vita Vea is a top 10 D tackle. Kalijah Kancey, he could lead the team in sacks. So you're talking about a top 20 edge, a top 10 D tackle, a guy that could lead the team in sacks, who's not in either of those categories. Kancey, he's got incredible pass rushing traits. Quickness, first step, explosion. He is a game changer that way. He needs to be more consistent against the run. Hassan Reddick, we've seen him have 15, 14 sack seasons in the NFL. Is he the same player is a question, but he gives them elite upside for their front four. Because if you have Reddick playing like he used to play with that other, those other guys, now we're talking about a deadly front four. And Chris Braswell, I like out of Alabama. I think he's going to be a good edge setter in the NFL. He's very athletic. Maybe not incredible pass rush upside. I expect more out of him this year. They've got still the big man Nelson on the edge, who's really good against the run. He's super big. Logan Hall is their D tackle 3, who's a former high second-round pick, who's a decent stopper. And I think William Golston is still on the team. So they've got plenty of depth. Definitely. I'm more familiar with the Bucs as a personnel, as a team, so that does play into it a little bit. But I think that Reddick could really tap into the upside of their pass rush. I think Kancey could take a step forward. I already know what Diaby and Vita Vea are, and I think younger guys like Chris Braswell also could take a step. So the Bucs are at number 16 for me. At number 15, the 49ers, maybe the X-factor defensive line in the entire NFL this year. The 49ers have so much youth, and it makes them very hard to calculate. But with Robert Saleh, I almost wanted to move them higher because I wanted to bank on this youth converting into talent and production, right? And I think they are much better than last year. I think going from Malik Collins and Leonard Floyd and Javon Hargrave, who got injured, some older bodies and older guys, into some younger guys like Alfred Collins and Michael Williams and even Bryce Huff, right? These guys, I think, are really going to get after it for Robert Saleh. I think they have a really good combination of size against the run and also athleticism and speed against the pass. I think that they understand what they want to deploy in certain situations. I think the Niners understand that very well under Robert Saleh. So first of all, they have a superhuman alpha in Nick Bosa, who has to be doubled on every play because he's in the backfield every play otherwise, right? They have Michael Williams, who is a first-round pick, a top 11 pick or whatever he was. He's got incredible length, incredible size, and he's already going to become, like, right away, one of the best run defenders in football. I have no question. He's pretty much Eric Armstead 2.0 for this team. He's going to move inside on pass rush situations and dominate there like he did at Georgia. Alfred Collins was one of the best run-stopping players in the entire draft. That was a good, solid pick at defensive tackle out of Texas. The same could be said about West, who also was a nice later pick at defensive tackle. He is dominating camp right now, apparently. Powerhouse, a guy that also elite against the run in those draft metrics. You bring in Huff off the bench on third down in sub-package situations. You move Michael inside. You've got Huff and Bosa on the edges. Those are two 10-plus sack type guys when they get the opportunity. Huff is one of the quickest guys in football. His pass rush off the edge, there's a reason he's been one of the most efficient pass rushers when he gets his opportunity. He was played in the wrong scheme last year, but under Saleh, under the Jets, he was incredible. There's a reason he was signed to a great contract with the Eagles. It didn't work out because of the scheme. Jordan Elliott is solid. Yetur Gross-Matos has got that hybrid inside-outside versatility as well. Don't sleep on him. He was pretty good at the end of last year for this team. There's a number of names, Kevin Gibbons as well. There's a number of names that will contribute. There's a lot of depth here, similar to the late, days of Saleh and DeMeco Ryans. I think they've just infused this unit with youth, and that brings a lot of questions. That definitely brings a lot of, how good is this guy? How good is that guy? But I clearly see the vision here for how they want to deploy it. I clearly understand it, and I think it's going to be effective. So I have them at number 15. At number 14, the Cleveland Browns, who also have infused their unit a little bit, with Mason Graham at defensive tackle. I think, obviously, you have Myles Garrett, who's the best defensive lineman in all of football, probably, right? Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, TJ Watt, you give them shout-outs, but Myles Garrett, first guy ever, 4 straight, 14 sack seasons, a game changer. Nobody impacts an offense in their game plan like Myles Garrett, right? All-around beast. Mason Graham's interesting. He was the top defensive tackle drafted this year. He, I think, could be a really good player. And I think in Cleveland, it's really interesting and fascinating because beside Myles Garrett, he could be the guy that they've been missing. Like, they haven't really had like a stud defensive tackle pass rusher. Maybe Mason Graham can be that guy. I do know that he'll be solid. He's fundamentally sound. He's got, I think, enough athleticism to get the job done. There are concerns about his traits and things, but I feel like technique-wise, just his consistency, his motor, I think he's going to play well beside Myles Garrett. So look out for him. They bring in Malik Collins to complement Shelby Harris. They moved on from Dalvin Tomlinson, so they brought in Malik Collins. So Collins, Tomlinson, some kind of carryover in terms of pass rush first defensive tackles. Malik Collins, I would say he's a better pure pass rusher than Dalvin Tomlinson, but he lacks the run discipline. He was very inconsistent for the Niners. Did put up pressures, did put up some sacks, has put up production, but inconsistent against the run, takes some poor lanes and things like that at times. Shelby Harris is one of the best D-tackle threes you can find as a veteran. Isaiah McGuire is extremely underrated. Last year, he set the NFL on fire late in the year, and a very capable edge setter for sure. So look out for him. I'm not in love with their edge depth. I've never been a Joe Tryon-Shoyinka guy. I don't think Aquara is anything special. I don't love their edge depth overall. I think it's okay. I think besides Myles Garrett, they're counting on McGuire to really develop. If he can develop, if Mason Graham can develop, I'm probably underrating this unit. They're probably a top 10 unit if these guys really develop and become studs. Because on paper, they have enough here, but I don't really love, the Shelby Harris, the Malik Collins, the older guys a little bit, and then the edge depth a little bit. I do think that their front four, on paper, their starting four is a little Myles Garrett reliant in comparison to the past when they had Zadarius Smith or they had Jadeveon Clowney. Like, they had other guys to count on. So there's a lot of projection here, a little bit more than past years. So at number 14, the Browns. At number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, the Browns, the Niners, these teams are all very similar. They all have one stud: Parsons, Bosa, Garrett. The Cowboys can make an argument that they're the only team out of the three that has a second stud, and that is Osa Odigizua, who is one of the best pass rushing D tackles in football. He's probably one of the 5 best pass rushing defensive tackles in the NFL. His quickness, right? He is incredible as an interior pass rusher. He is somewhat inconsistent as a run defender, and that's the overall problem with Dallas on this list. I couldn't rank them higher because they're inconsistent against the run. Last year, they were 28th in run stop win rate, 30th in run yards per attempt allowed, right? Mozzie Smith has been a bust so far. They're hoping for more out of him under Matt Eberflus, potentially, right? Solomon Thomas, they also signed him. He's a former bust of a first-round pick. He's a slender body in comparison to Mozzie Smith. Maybe he replaces him on certain situations or gives them a little bit of depth there. But, like, they need something out of Mozzie Smith. He's the make or break X factor of the defensive line once again. But I love the idea of Dante Fowler opposite Micah Parsons. He's a guy that had 10.5 sacks in Washington last year. He's a former Cowboy. I've seen him play in this system. I've seen him play in the pin your ears back style, and that's the way he gets after it. He is a very good speed rusher. So him and Parsons, that is wicked speed. Along with Osa, that is wicked speed, right? That is quickness, that's pop, that's off the ball. Enzaraku out of Boston College, same sort of thing. Off the ball, quickness, speed, finesse, bend. That's what the Cowboys have for days, is pass rush upside. Their pass rush unit is going to be crazy. Marshawn Nealon is second round 2 years ago. Capable edge guy. They're hoping for him to be like a Dorrance Armstrong, like edge setter, that type of guy who can fill in for Dante Fowler on early downs. They have a plethora of other players on the edge as well. I believe another second round pick, former guy that I'm missing. Is it not Golston? I can't quite recall what his name is. Cowboys fans, help me out. But man, it's a common name, I feel like. I can't quite get it. But yeah, the Cowboys, I'm counting on everything in my head, guys. Every single team, all in my head. So give me a break. But the Dallas Cowboys, yeah, their pass rush is just phenomenal. So that's what I really love about it. I'm just concerned about the run defense. But I definitely know they're going to get sacks. So at number 12, we have the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are kind of polar opposite from the Cowboys. I kind of know they're going to be a stud against the run because they have DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. That's kind of hard to beat on the inside, right? DeForest Buckner last year, too, was taking over games, absolutely ruining game plans. Last year, he was one of the best pure play-to-play pass rushers at his position, but as a collective, you can't run the ball up the middle against the Colts. Like, good luck. They are powerhouses, and yes, they got older, and that's a concern, but you combine one of the best run-stopping and best defensive tackle duos in football, arguably the best. Like, they are right in that conversation, and you get that upside in your pass rush from Latu Latu in year 2. I like that potential, right? I like that Latu could potentially be the guy to get 10 sacks, which the Colts have really been desperately lacking. Samson Ebukam does return from an Achilles. He was their best pass rusher 2 years ago. Very underrated season for him in 2023. So look for him to contribute as more of a depth piece now that Latu was drafted and he obviously had the Achilles. So they're going to work him back. Kwity Paye is very solid. He's a 7 to 9 sack type of guy. Very solid against the run. Very good athlete. He just doesn't have the upper echelon pass rush ability, but that's what they're expecting Latu to do. That's what they have DeForest Buckner for. I don't love their depth beyond those players. Neville Gallimore is their third defensive tackle. Never been a huge fan. I feel like their D tackle, if Buckner or Stewart get hurt, they're both older. It's a little suspect. So that's where I'm a little concerned and left them out of the top 10. And they really weren't great as a pass rush unit last year. Latu, Paye, they really, on a per-play basis, weren't super amazing. But I am expecting a jump out of Latu. I am expecting Buckner and Stewart to not be suspended or injured right at the start of the year. And I'm expecting Samson Ebukam to give them a nice edge trio to keep those guys fresh as well. So I really like their floor against the run and their upside in their pass rush. At number 11, we're going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are a unit that I want to not rank this high, but it's almost impossible not to, right? They had the second most sacks in football and the best rush yards per attempt allowed. So they're a dominant run defense. Whether it's Matabike or Travis Jones inside or away with his freakish strength on the outside, they're able to stop the run and set the edge. And Van Noy is savvy as ever. But as a pure four-man pass rush, I think they're not as great as some of the teams I've already mentioned, but they're so well timed and schemed and wisely utilized with all their skill sets. It's hard to not quantify for that, right? Or like at least like give them an edge over certain units. Also, they have an X factor in rookie Mike Green, who could be their best pass rusher as a rookie. This guy could have 10 sacks if they give him the opportunity. He has extreme upside. Yes, maybe a little bit of an extreme off the field, a little bit there, but Green has crazy traits. Like his bend, his plethora of moves. He has a deep bag of moves that as a rookie, he's going to be effective right away. So I would almost like ask them to take Oweh off the field in sub-package situations or find a different way to deploy him. Maybe even move Kyle Van Noy to like inside linebacker, use him as like a pass rusher like the Patriots have. Like you could do so many different things here, but Green gives them so much more upside to their pass rush from a pure 4-man rush. Matabike obviously has 10-plus sack upside. We've seen it before, and he's their most effective player all the way around. Travis Jones is a stud against the run, doesn't provide a ton as a pass rusher. Broderick Washington is a huge body, and he's good against the run as well. Kyle Van Noy had 12 and a half sacks. I think Oweh had around 10 or 9. So all the way around, they're very productive as a unit. I feel like Van Noy and Oweh are kind of like anywhere from 25th to 35th at the edge position. Matabike is like a top 15 D tackle. Travis Jones is like a top 40 D tackle. Like, they don't really have like a super stud, but they also don't have one singular starter who isn't in the top 40 at their position. So it's kind of an interesting unit to rank. But at number 11, I have the Ravens. At number 10, entering the top 10, the Philadelphia Eagles are still in my top 10. I nearly had them outside. They lost Josh Sweat, who was their best edge rusher last year and has been for a minute, I feel like, overall. Like, Hassan Reddick was a better pass rusher, but Sweat collectively as a whole, better player. I would also argue that Milton Williams is a massive loss, considering he was the most effective pass rusher on the interior in the entire NFL, maybe besides Chris Jones last year. So they lose 2 massive pieces to their defensive front. That hurts. But they did try their best to collect some talent like Ojulari and Uche to help replace Josh Sweat. Uche has definitely shown and flashed some pass rushing pedigree. And I actually love his skill set in Vic Fangio's defense. I think he is a 3-4 outside linebacker to like perfection. Like, that's what he is. That's what he was at Michigan. He's a Nolan Smith type guy. He's finesse and speed. And he has great bend and great skill set, spin moves, all that sort of. He has a great bag. I wouldn't be shocked if he had 8+ sacks this year, 10+ sacks. Like, I wouldn't be shocked at all. If he gets his head on straight and they deploy him correctly, he could be what they were looking for in Bryce Huff, but just a better deployment in the scheme. But then you also look a little deeper, right? Hunt is a developing player in year 2 who will be a starter for them opposite Nolan Smith. He's not spectacular, but he looked really promising as a rookie. They're expecting big things out of him. Same for Ajomo, who's like their next Milton Williams, right? So Ajomo will replace Jordan Davis in pass rushing situations like Milton Williams did. So they already have the replacements in-house. Jalen Carter is the stud that makes everything around him work. Nolan Smith is an up-and-coming potential stud, but at least a good player with, a lot of great pass rushing finesse. Then you have Jordan Davis, who's a brick wall run defender, but also had some intriguing pass rush numbers as well. So I think they've got plenty of depth here, at least 3 deep at both positions. They don't have a spectacular edge position, but they could if Uche or Hunt take a leap, which is very possible. So at number 10, I have the Eagles. At number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. I think a very underrated front here. First of all, I think they could have an absolutely bully tandem at defensive tackle in Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy enters year 2, hopefully healthier now. I expect him in a Mike Macdonald scheme, which also I play a little bit here. Mike Macdonald, is going to have one of the best front sevens. You just know it. And by the end of last year, they did. I mean, they were dominating up front last year against the run, against the pass, blitzing. They add DeMarcus Lawrence, who's been one of the best run defending edges in football really his entire career. Plus, he gives them a little bit of flexibility with how you could deploy him as a pass rusher, inside, outside. Leonard Williams is a defensive player of the year candidate last year, 12 and a half sacks, blocking field goals, intercepting passes for touchdowns. He's a stud. Boye Mafe is a sneaky good, like top 40 edge rusher, pretty good pass rusher overall. Nwosu has been injured for the last couple of years, it feels like. but he's a good player when he plays. Quality depth. Jerron Reed had a really good year last year in this system. They have Jonathan Hankins for size and bulk. They have Derek Hall as well off the edge, who had a good season last year. So they go 4 deep at edge rusher. They go 4 deep at defensive tackle, and they might not have as many studs as other teams that I've already discussed or that I will discuss, but I feel like they have so many quality starter caliber players, plus they have a great scheme artist, and they have potentially a stud in the making in Byron Murphy. So at number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. At number 8, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are just classically every year under Sean McDermott, deep, and I feel like this is the deepest defensive line they've had in a minute, and I think they have upside because Joey Bosa potentially healthy. So if Joey Bosa is healthy entering the season, right, the whole offseason, training camp, no injuries, this could be the guy that they needed, right? Von Miller got hurt, right, when they needed him the most, and that never panned out for them. Joey Bosa, if healthy, that might be the guy they need because Joey Bosa could still be a top 20 edge rusher in football if he's healthy. The problem with him is that he's been hurt all the time. And whether you can't even look into his production because he's playing injured. So if Bosa is anything close to what he was, this could be the reason the Bills win the Super Bowl. Like, that is it. Because he's a 3-down edge player still. He's still going to be great against the run. He's technically great. He's speed to power. And as an edge too, that's the upside they've been missing, right? Greg Rousseau, top 20 edge rusher in my book, quality all the way around, not spectacular, right? Not Micah Parsons, but very good player. Ed Oliver, not Jalen Carter, but top 18 defensive tackle. Certainly capable. Both those guys have 10 plus sacks in any given year. Joey Bosa, same thing if healthy. AJ Epinesa, very smart player, good, I think, in terms of his run defense. Daquan Jones has been a sneaky good player for the Bills for like 3 or 4 years in a row. TJ Sanders, second-round rookie defensive tackle, I think gives them a little bit more quickness and potential from their pass rush on the interior. I like the idea of, I believe is it Ogunjobi who they signed? I like the idea of adding his size to the inside. I like the idea of adding Mike Hoyt as well from the Rams for his size on the edge. They drafted Landon Dickerson with his length and his size on the edge. He's 6'6", 260. So they've added bulk to their defensive front. They've added upside and potential pass rush ability here. And they've already had very solid players like Rousseau, Oliver, Daquan Jones. So they go deep. They're very deep. They have like 2 starting caliber defensive lines. That's what I love about the Bills. So at number 8, Buffalo. At number 7, the Miami Dolphins. Maybe the most underrated front 7 in football, the Miami Dolphins. When you look at this unit on paper, it could be ridiculous. Like, this is the reason I have them at 7. I know that Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb are coming off major injuries, but I'm trying to project for them to be healthy and on the field this year. They have 3 guys who have had 10 sacks. So think about that for a second. Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb, and Zach Sealer. All have had or are capable of 10 sacks. Chop Robinson might be the best pass rusher on their team, and I didn't even mention him. So they have 4 guys, in my mind, that in any given season could have 10 sacks. That's pretty good. Plus, their other starter is a first-round monster out of Michigan who's going to stop the run. Kenneth Grant. He replaces Calais Campbell. Now, they don't have great defensive tackle depth. Benito Jones is okay, but they don't go layers deep like Buffalo. But they have 3 potential edge top 32 guys when healthy. And they have a very underrated D tackle in Zach Sealer, who's top 15, very good all around. And they have an up-and-comer in Kenneth Grant. I really don't have to say anything else because it all depends on the health. Phillips, in my mind, when he was playing at his best, was top 12 pass rusher in football. Bradley Chubb, in my mind, last time we saw him, he was top 20. So Like, if they're healthy with Chop Robinson the way he was looking, he was getting doubled, chipped all day last year. If that comes to the fields on Sundays, this is a upper echelon unit. At number 6, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings boosted their interior big time this offseason. First of all, you've got Jonathan Allen, who was signed to, I think, a 2 or 3 year contract out of Washington. I still think he's a top 25 D tackle if he's healthy. Probably not the same player at his peak that he used to be, top 10 defensive tackle, really good pass rusher, really good run defender. But I think if you deploy him, Harrison Phillips, and Javon Hargrave neatly and effectively, which I expect Brian Flores to be able to do, Hargrave more as a specialist, pass rush specialist, Allen and Phillips more early downs, Phillips specifically for early downs to stop the run. I could see that rotation being effective with all 3 of them being older, but all 3 of them still offering some upside in their role, okay? Injuries will be influential here. Can Allen and Hargrave stay healthy? That's a big deal. Grenard and Van Ginkel are one of the best edge duos in football. Grenard led the NFL in pressures last year, or second or something in pressures, and I think he was first in run stops. So he is a dog. Like, he is an absolute motor machine. Him and Van Ginkel played the 2nd and 3rd most snaps at the position in the NFL last year, and the man behind that is Dallas Turner, a first-round pick with extreme speed and upside and potential traits that they could unlock this year, especially in a Brian Flores scheme. But Grenard, Van Ginkel's one of the best playmakers at the position. He can rush the quarterback. He can drop into coverage. He's a great blitzer. He's a savvy defender in space. He reads screens like no one's business. Grenard's a one-on-one pass rush specialist. And then you've got Allen, Phillips, Hargrave. Really good unit. I think they're going to be better in terms of their interior pass rush. And I think that they'll be just as good on the edge. Like, love Van Ginkel, one of my favorite guys. So, at number 6, Minnesota. At number 5, entering the top 5, the Houston Texans are at number 5. The Texans I could have put at 2 or 3. Really the difference for the Texans was I think they have the best edge duo in the NFL. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are the best edge duo that you'll see in football. And Danico Autry is probably the best edge 3 you'll see in football. Maybe other than, I guess, like Bradley Chubb or the Dolphins guy. But he's right up there. Right? And what I love about that is Anderson and Hunter, they stay on the edge. Autry goes inside on 3rd down, and all of a sudden you have a pass rush that nobody can stop. Like, this pass rush, when they're on fire, we saw it last year. They were first in pass rush win rate for a reason. They are dogs getting to the quarterback. Like, these guys are unstoppable. Anderson is elite. Hunter is elite. Both guys can win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, they're that caliber of player. Autry has been one of the most versatile, best pieces on the defensive front for years. The reason they're only 5 is because their D tackle group doesn't feature a stud or really like a great player that I really think can help them against the run. Sheldon Rankins is a solid starter, specifically for D'Amico the last time we saw him. He can get 5-6 sacks. You know, Tim Settle, he actually had a pretty good season last year. He's not a bad D tackle at all. And Fatu Kazi is more of the run defender type, but he hasn't been overly efficient in this system. So I look at the Texans. I just wish they had one guy at defensive tackle who could like really be a run stuffer for them. And I think that's what they're missing in comparison to the other units we're about to talk about. But they have the best edge, maybe the edge rotation in the NFL. Like, they have Derek Barnett, who I haven't even mentioned. They've got guys out on the edge, like 4, 5 deep at edge. Their edge rotation is ridiculous. If they had a big-time D tackle, man, they would be special, like all-time special. But I do think their pass rush is arguably the best. When they get into a pass rush situation, they're arguably the best. I just feel like they're a little bit thinner against the run than other teams. So that's why I have them at number 5. At number 4, the Los Angeles Rams, who are young, but man, are they good. Jared Verse, already a Defensive Player of the Year candidate in 1 year. Dominant against the run and the pass. Every single advanced metric, he ranked in the top 10. He's already a top 10 edge rusher. Powerful, strong, absolute man among boys as a rookie. Kobe Turner, top 12 D tackle in football. 8-9 sacks in his first 2 seasons each. Fisk already 8+ sacks as a rookie, was top 10 in pressures, great pass rusher, great quickness, great get off, incredible pass rusher. Needs to work on his run defense a little bit and his sturdiness and anchor. Byron Young, he's had some really good seasons in the NFL already. I thought he had a sneaky good year because Verse and Turner and Fisk took all the attention. Young had a really good year last year. I think he had 7.5, 8 sacks. He was still like a good productive pass rusher on a per play basis. They add Poona Ford, who's a really good run defender. He was 5th graded according to PFF at D tackle last year. A really good run defender, a smaller guy in terms of height, but he gets under you, he lifts you up, and he stops the run, and he's a pain. And then they drafted Josiah Stewart out of the 3rd round. I don't love their edge depth. I wish they had a little bit more proven edge depth behind Verse or Young in case one of those guys get hurt. But their top 3 D tackles, it might be the best D tackle trio in the NFL. And they do have a top 10 edge, and they do have about a top 40 edge in Byron Young as well. So they're young, they're promising, they're only getting started. This could be the best defensive front in football next year, and I wouldn't be surprised. At number 3, the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, they were 1st in sacks, 2nd in yards per attempt allowed on the ground, and 1st in pressures. That speaks to how effective they are as a front 7. They have a top 10 defensive tackle in Zach Allen, another top 15 defensive tackle in John Franklin Myers, who is one of the top 3 pass rushers at the position last year and has played outside, inside, great versatility. DJ Jones is one of the best pure nose tackles playing the run in football. Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito were both my top 32 edge rushers. Bonito is one of the best speed rushers in football. In my opinion, top 10 pass rusher, top 15 edge rusher overall. Incredible playmaker, great range, coverage, all that sort of stuff. Jonathan Cooper, very sturdy, very steady player on the edge as well. Gets the dirty done. And, we'll see what Ellis can become. The edge depth isn't great, isn't spectacular. The D line, they're really stacked at the top. Their first 5 or 6 guys, especially their front 5, is as good, if not better, than anybody in football. Across the board, they have no singular weakness. All 5 of those players rank in the top 40 at their position. They're all really awesome players. If you go DJ Jones, Allen, and Myers beside him, with Cooper and Bonito, it's just that's awesome. Their layers are, the reason they're 3 and not 2 or 1 is they don't have great guys behind that, which is a little concerning if there are injuries, right? So at number 3, the Broncos. At number 2, the New York Giants. Talk about depth, especially on the edge. The New York Giants. The Giants, they don't have the best interior besides Dexter Lawrence, but here's the thing. They have Sexy Dexy, who is 2-1. He is an absolute beast. He might be the best defensive tackle in all of football this year. He's definitely the best nose tackle, and he's a game changer, and he's a game plan changer. And he is the guy that everyone has to pay attention to. So if you have to pay attention to him, okay, now you have Brian Burns on one edge and Abdul Carter on the other. Good luck. Abdul Carter could be the next Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, the next TJ Watt. Abdul Carter is going to be that good, in my opinion. He's going to be a top 10 edge rusher. Will Anderson, Jared Verse, put him in that conversation. Not yet, obviously, but he's going to get there, I believe. He is so explosive. He's a rocket on the football field, and I think he's going to be right away 10 sacks in the NFL. His speed, his bend, all the traits that you would look for in a Von Miller, Micah Parsons-esque player. Dexter Lawrence is dominant. Brian Burns, I ranked him as 13th in the NFL at edge last year. He had a pretty good season, back to 8.5, 9 sacks. Was actually top 5 in run stops. Really good traits all the way around. Kayvon Thibodeau, one of the better edge 3s you'll find in football. Former top 5 pick, former 12 sack guy in the NFL at a time. Very sturdy, can play all 3 downs at a pretty high level, and he complements that unit. They got Golston also coming off the edge, who they signed from the Cowboys. He's their 4th edge rusher. He's more of a 3 or a 2 on a lot of other teams in the NFL, maybe a 2 on about 10 of these teams on this list. Roy Robertson Harris, I've seen better from him than last year. He had a bad year. He fell off the face of the planet last year. But maybe in this scheme, he'd be better. Who knows? Nunez Roches is a mammoth of a nose tackle, big guy inside to complement Dexter Lawrence. They also drafted Alexander as well, who I liked as a prospect, very powerful player. So they've got a ton of depth on both positions. They're a little weaker at D tackle than I would really like at D tackle 2 specifically, but their edge rotation is ridiculous. They've got 3 potential superstars, 2 other really good players. So at number 2, the Giants, and at number 1, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have the best defensive line in football because they have arguably the best defensive tackle yeah, that's true. They have arguably the best defensive tackle and arguably the best edge rusher in football. Cam Hayward might not be seen as arguably the best defensive tackle, but he kind of is arguably the best defensive tackle. He was graded as number 1 by PFF last year. So, yeah, he's at least top 3 in a lot of people's book, right? So Cam Hayward, future Hall of Famer. TJ Watt, future Hall of Famer. Alex Highsmith, very good player. Alex Highsmith, top 20 edge rusher in football. You know, Benton, really underrated player. Herbig, really underrated player. Derek Harmon, first round pick, maybe the best defensive tackle in this entire class when it's all said and done. I wouldn't be surprised. And he was the best pass rusher at that position in college football last year, according to many statistics. So you have one of the best D tackle 3s, one of the best edge 3s, the best or the second best edge 1, a top 3 D tackle in football, and a top 3 edge 2 in football. I mean, that's the best defensive front. I don't even need to talk about it. They were number 1 in pass rush grade. They were 3rd in pass rush win rate last year, and I think their sacks will definitely rise in 2025. That's all I got to say, guys. That's it. That's my list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, Gronk spiked the like button, man. I put a lot of time into this. Let me know in the comments what you think of my list. It's Mitch. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.